plan on trying to get over there to that. All right. Bible geography. Of course, we know what this is. Geo meaning earth. Graphos means to write about the earth. And we're talking about, of course, the Bible lands, known as the Holy Lands at one time, but now, of course, we know them more as the Bible lands. It was the Holy Land when God was abiding in that part of the world when Israel was his chosen people, but that's not the case any longer. Now, what we're going to do here, we're just by way of a little bit of review. What we have here is we want to turn this slide off. Can we turn this middle row off? Maybe we can see that just a little better. Okay, there we go. This is modern day, the modern day map right here where we're at. You see this is Turkey. This would be Asia Minor. This is where, Corinth over here, Galatia, Thessalonica, all those places would be over here in Asia Minor. We see this area right here. This was Babylon. We see Iraq. Down here would have been right around in here on this river. Would have been somewhere around in here. Of course, we see a good depiction here of the Fertile Crescent, where Abraham would have gone up here, and he would have stopped up here in Haran, and then he had made his way down into Palestine, or into Canaan. And of course, over here, a modern day Iran. This was the Medo-Persian Empire, eventually just the Persian Empire. And what else we got here? Of course, we have Egypt over here, the Sinai Peninsula. But this is all the modern day area. We see Cairo here, right here. We see Alexandria. We'll talk a little bit about that here in a moment, still in existence. Now, it's not the Alexandria of old. It is built upon the ruins of Alexander's city and the city of the Ptolemies, but they still have some of the ruins there, so you can see that. Obviously, we have Israel today, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, those places. You still have a lot of those areas that we read about in the Bible. You see Tyre. But anyway, you have Egypt. You have the Red Sea that comes into these two. What are these two gulfs called right here? The one on the left is Suez, the one on the right, Aqaba. And Suez now, of course, has a canal that goes all the way into the Mediterranean Sea. But Cairo is close to where Memphis used to be. It's no longer in existence. But anyway, that's some of the modern day, or that's the modern day map of what we're talking about right now. And this is, again, another modern day map. Mount Ararat. What was Mount Ararat? This mountain right here? Where the Ark landed. Of course, it's not just one mountain. It's actually a chain of mountains. And we see Turkey right here. Again, Asia Minor that we read about in the New Testament, how close it is to Russia. We have Greece over here. This is the heel of Italy. And we're going to see a map in a moment that covers, and we're going to see from the Bible lands that we read about from the Old Testament all the way through the New Testament, from the Persian Gulf, where right around in here from Ur of the Chaldees, where Abraham went, all the way up to here. That covers that whole area. And then from the Sinai Peninsula all the way up to Mount Ararat. That's the Bible lands. We're going to see how far that is here in a little while. Of course, we have the Mediterranean Sea, the Black Sea, and the Caspian Sea. Those are the main bodies of water that surround to the north, that surround the Bible lands. Of course, the Red Sea, the Persian Gulf, the rivers that create the Fertile Crescent, the ones that that were mentioned in Genesis that helped water the Garden of Eden that we still know of today. What were those? The Tigris and the Euphrates. And when Joshua talked about their forefathers who were on the other side of the flood, he was talking about the Euphrates River. And of course, that watered this whole area. And then you have this Nile River that comes from right here. Or let's see, yeah. Comes up and comes into waters Egypt. So you have a lot of stuff here. So here's this this area we're talking about from the Persian Gulf all the way to the boot hill of Italy, which was known as Rome. But there was still a band of the Italians. Who was a member of the Italian band? You recall? In the New Testament. He was the first Gentile convert. Cornelius, he was a member of the Italian band. 2,200 miles covering the Bible lands. Now, this isn't the land owned by God's people, but this is the land we talk about. This is the land we talk about. Tarsus, right about there, I believe. Saul of Tarsus. This other area, the Sinai Peninsula, all the way up to Mount Ararat, 900 miles. So we're talking a lot of miles, a lot of area. Can you all see them on your way? So here's an overview again of it. We have Jerusalem, and of course the boot hill that we're talking about, all the way over to here somewhere, and then up into the mountains of Ararat. So we have Corinth, which would have been here. We have all of this, Asia, that they talk about, modern day Turkey. Antioch, this is the home base of Paul and Barnabas, and then Paul and Silas, when they were doing their missionary journeys out into this area here. This is the church in Antioch. And what do we remember about Antioch? They first began to call God's people Christians first at Antioch. Now there are two Antiochs. You have Antioch here, and you have Antioch over here in Asia. So this is the Antioch that we're talking about there. This is another look at this Fertile Crescent, the Persian Gulf, and you see the rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates coming around, Phoenicia, Tyre, Palestine, and then of course we remember that Canaan was just a part of Palestine, and it was everything that we know of that is called Canaan was on what side of the Jordan River? It's on the west side, because as looking at the map, it's on the left, so that would be on the west side. Everything included on the east side would have been Palestine. So when you looked at the kingdom, the divided kingdom came up about right here, would have been Judea or Judah, and the northern kingdom came down and of course had this, and then came out and had a little bit over here when the divided kingdom was taking place. But here we have Assyria. Now this area right here, you recall what this area was always called. It didn't matter if Babylon was in charge. It didn't matter if the Medo-Persians or Persia was in charge. It didn't matter if Assyria was in charge. This area right here was always called a particular name. It was called that because it's in between these two rivers. Mesopotamia, land between the rivers of Euphrates and the Tigris. Without these rivers and without the Nile feeding this Nile Delta, this place would have just been like the Arabian and the Syrian desert here. Now, today, this part right here is modern day Jordan. This is modern day Jordan. Okay, let's take a look at our maps here real quick. We're going to fill in some places. I don't remember how I got this set up here. I don't know if it has the name and then the spot, and I didn't number them on my map. So this may just be it. We're putting them in for your own use here. Page 36, I think, in your book, ain't it? Huh? Yeah, we don't want to go over here on the part where it's got it listed, said. Yeah, that's the point, was we're trying to find these places. Okay, Egypt. I see now I did it completely wrong. I'll tell you what, well, we'll just do it this way. It doesn't matter. It's too late in the game. So there would be Egypt, obviously. Mediterranean Sea to the north. So you fill this in, and this will be for your use. For the Mediterranean Sea, we're going to go to the Nile River Valley. The Nile River Valley. And in the Nile River Valley, what river flows there? That'd be the Nile River, wouldn't it? I could remember that one. Now, we're going to see one of these little towns or cities here in Egypt, and I don't remember which one, so, okay. Why do they call this part of Egypt Lower Egypt? You remember? Because that's to the north. It is lower in altitude, because it's higher in altitude here, but that's the way the river flows. And because it's lower here. And that's one of the odd things about the Nile River. It flows to the north, and it's the longest river in the world. So Lower Egypt is to the north, which is never how it happens. And so to the opposite of that, Upper Egypt would be to the south. Goshen. What was Goshen? That's where Joseph put his people. They liked this area because it was obviously well watered. They were shepherds and had cattle, and so they liked that. Now, what is the Pelusiac? You remember there were two branches in this delta, two main branches. You see there are a bunch of branches here, but there are two main branches. This branch that goes to the east into the Mediterranean is the Pelusiac branch. That's the eastern main branch. You remember what the western main branch was called? That's this one right here. Wrong. Canopic. You have the Pelusiac and you have the Canopic. Memphis. There's Memphis. Now, Memphis is, I wrote something down here. I didn't want to forget it. Memphis is 10 miles south of modern-day Cairo. Okay? Modern-day Cairo is the capital of the nation of Egypt. Now, Memphis doesn't exist anymore. And the reason it originally went out of existence was another city was established by Alexander the Great. What was that city's name? Alexandria. And that right here is modern-day Cairo. You can see the little circle under this. And right below that, about 10 or 12 miles from Cairo. I think our book says 12. I think everybody else says 10, so it's 10 or 12 miles, but This is modern day Cairo. Here's the Jordan, the nation of Jordan I was telling you about. It's just directly east of the Dead Sea. This area, what was this area known as right here during Bible times? Edom. Edom. Okay. Ramses. Ramses, that was a chief city in the land of Goshen. Probably named after the Pharaoh by that name. Ramses, you can put your little star there off of that branch. Now here's a kind of a colored map of that. You have Ramses here. You have Memphis down here. This wadi right here, we hadn't talked about the wadis. A wadi, and this is interesting. When you read the parable of the two men, one built his house on the sand and one built his house on the rock, and the rains came tumbling down, and we sing that during Vacation Bible School. And when you learn about Bible geography and you start learning how these wadis work, a wadi is a river. It's a dry riverbed. And so what we might call it is a wet weather river. When it rains a lot, you'll get water in a wadi. Okay? And so when Jesus was telling that parable, what he's saying is, instead of building your house on a rock, you're being foolish and you're going down into the empty, wet weather riverbed and building it on the sand. And so what's going to happen when the rains come down? Well, the water comes rushing through. So now it makes a little more sense. Just because it rains, why would your house come tumbling down? I never did understand that as a child. I thought, well, we live in a house, it rains all the time, and our house doesn't fall over. But understanding the geography of the area, anytime you see a wadi, whatever, that's a dry riverbed, or it's a wet weather. So when it would rain, when the Nile would overflow, those wadis would fill up, and they would not hold water year round, but they would during the rainy season and when the Nile overflowed. So, not smart to build your house in a wadi, because when it rained and here comes the water, it's going to wash your house away. That's why you build it on a rock. And so that's interesting when you learn about what the wadi is. All right, so Alexandria, up here on the west of the Canopic and on the seashore of the Mediterranean Sea. Now, what do we know about Alexandria? Alexandria was, let me see, let me get my notes here. Alexandria had one of the 7 wonders of the world at one time. It was called the Alexandrian Lighthouse. And it was, of course, during the Hellenistic period. And it had the Library of Alexandria, and it was burned. Today they have a replica of the Library of Alexandria. Of course, it's not anything like the original. But Alexandria right here is northwest of Cairo, about 114 miles. Northwest of Cairo, about 114 miles. Alexandria put Memphis out of business. That's what happened to Memphis. Alexandria is one of the largest cities today in the nation of Egypt, and it's obviously it's on a seaport. They do a lot of industry up there, and so that's what happens out of that city of Alexandria. Who was from Alexandria? Acts 18:24. A certain Jew named Apollos, born at Alexandria, an eloquent man and mighty in the Scriptures, came to Ephesus. So, when we are reading about Apollos, this is where he came from. And of course, when we look at the maps and we see Corinth, In some of the other areas, we can see the location of where he was at. Here's Alexandria, modern day. We see Syria, Lebanon, Israel, surrounded by still the heathen nations. Of course, they're a heathen nation too, but we understand. That's what I told when I moved to Memphis. I moved to Memphis, and you had all these Arkansas fans, you had LSU fans, you had Alabama fans, you had Mississippi fans. I said, now I know what Israel felt like when they went to the land of Canaan, surrounded by the heathen nations. All right, the Red Sea. This is the Red Sea. Now, this is a gulf off of the Red Sea, but down here is what is the official Red Sea. But both of these are waters of the Red Sea. They just happen to be gulfs off of the Red Sea, and those gulfs have names. But this is the official Red Sea down here at the bottom. The Sinai Peninsula, that little triangle right in the middle of these two gulfs, where Israel spent 40 years wandering around. Sinai Peninsula. And in that Sinai Peninsula, what mountain is there? Mount Sinai. What happened on Mount Sinai? Moses received those 10 commandments. How many times did he receive them? 2 times. The second time, that second trip back up there, he's wishing he had held his temper. This is another modern day map. This is kind of the line right here of modern day Israel. And we're going to notice, I think I might have a map on here on some of these properties that they got a hold of during the 6-Day War back in the late 60s, like Gaza. They now control that. That's in the news right now. Golan Heights over here, the West Bank, this area. We'll see up here maybe. Gulf of Suez. What happened right here at the Gulf of Suez? The big event, the Red Sea crossing. Now, modern day rank heretics would like us to believe that crossing happened somewhere up here. That wouldn't be a miracle, would it? You had to cross around here somewhere. Had to be a miracle. Gulf of Suez, so that makes this one over here the Gulf of, well, we'll get to that in a moment. Here's some interesting information about the Suez Canal. I think we mentioned this last week maybe, but we've got a ship container crossways over in the Suez Canal back however long ago, and it was in the news. It was crossways over there for a good while. But 12% of global trade goes through the Suez Canal. 30% of global container ship traffic each day goes through there, and on average 52 ships pass through the canal each day. They tried for years to cut this canal from here to here without success, and finally they were able to do that. One of the world's most important canals. Shortest link between Asia and Europe. If you didn't have that, you're going to have to go all the way around. This is, now you won't see this now, but this is a aircraft carrier going through the Suez Canal. Yeah, I don't think we'll probably see that right now. It'd be a little dangerous for us, wouldn't it? But you can see how big that is, and the kind of traffic that can go through there. Gulf of Aqaba is this other one right here. Gulf of Aqaba. All right. We'll talk a little bit about some of these places right here. These are some important areas in this Sinai Peninsula area. You have the wilderness of Shur, wilderness of Etham. Everywhere you go in the Sinai Peninsula, you have a wilderness. And why would it be called that? Huh? There's nothing there. A bunch of sand, a bunch of hot, and a bunch of looking for something to drink. And that's one of the reasons that Moses caused himself not to be able to go over into the promised land. They were looking for some water, and he was supposed to speak to the rock, and he struck that rock. The wilderness of sin. Now, it's easy to get this wilderness confused with this wilderness. The wilderness of Zin is to the north. The wilderness of sin is right in the Sinai Peninsula. And here's how I keep that straight. Why were they wandering around in this Sinai Peninsula in the first place? Because of their sin. If they had gone on in and taken that land like God asked them to and had given to them, they wouldn't have been down here in the first place. They would have been up there where the land flowed with milk and honey and eating grapes where it took 2 or 3 men to carry the bunch back. The wilderness of Paran. You have again the wilderness of Zin to the northeast. Do y'all need that up there a little longer? Okay. Mount Sinai, again, that's where Moses spent 80 long days. Mount Sinai. Those commandments were delivered to him by the hands of angels. Sometimes we overlook that, but that's how it's described to us. There's Mount Sinai. We don't know the exact spot of that, but that's probably approximately about where it is. Here we go. Here's Edom to the south of the Dead Sea. Now again, who was the progenitor of the Edomites? Esau, brother of Jacob. He's not spoken very highly of in Genesis. The Dead Sea. Now why do they call it the Dead Sea? Nothing's going to live in the Dead Sea. The highest concentration of seawater anywhere on the planet. It doesn't have an outlet. It just, for the water to dissipate, it just has to evaporate. And that's why it's so thick. You can get out on that and just almost float. You can float on any water, but you can just walk out on there, walk out into it, and I've seen videos of it. People are almost floating with the whole upper half of their body out of the water. It gets so thick sometimes. It's full of minerals, and that's how a lot of people would, back in ancient times, would get their salt, was obviously from the rock around that area and from the water. That salt's not nearly as good as the kind of salt that we have. It doesn't last as long, but it is salt. Petra. Now this is an interesting place. What do you know about Petra? Are y'all familiar with that name? You've heard it. Do you recall? You've probably seen pictures of those rock face cut into the rock there in Petra, and it looks like a kind of a castle-looking place. Maybe this will. Let me show you here first. This is where Petra is today. The Seir Mountains. Now, the Seir Mountains are the Jabal al-Madbah mountains. Today, that's what they're known as. We call them the Seir Mountains in the Bible. We see Mount Seir right here. Now, some people have believed that Petra, the modern, it's just Petra, whether it's modern day or whenever it was created, it's the same place. Some people believe that Petra is Selah that we read of in the Bible. That's probably not the case. Probably not the case. Now, we don't know for sure, but it's unlikely that the two places are the same. But anyway, Petra is in this Arabah Valley basin, and it runs from the southern part of the Dead Sea all the way down to the Red Sea, and that's this basin right here. And when you see it here, it's just beautiful. You've seen this picture. You've probably seen it in some movies. If you like the old Mummy movies, Revenge of the Mummy, and different movies like that, this was in some of the Indiana Jones movies. But anyway, what is interesting about this, and this is an ancient, thousands of years before Christ came into the world, the engineering that it took to build this. And you notice these holes on the side. What do you imagine that is? When you first look at that, I would say, Ron asked me, he said, "What do you think that is?" I said, "That looks like they built scaffolding, and so they could start their..." Now this is the rock face. It's cut out of the rock face, okay? Petra means Rose City because of the color of this limestone right here. And that's what this is, limestone. But they didn't cut this from the ground up. Their engineering was so good, they started from the top and worked their way down. So they knew exactly how tall this needed to be, exactly how wide all this needed to be, and how tall this would get down here to the bottom for it to be exactly what they wanted. But the good thing is, by the time you start chipping away and cutting out up here, by the time you start getting down here, you got a pile of rock to stand on, so you're not on a big tall ladder. Here's a look from on up. Now remember, you're in a valley surrounded by mountains here, the Arabah Valley. Josephus said that during the time of Moses, the Midianites controlled this area. This is the inside of Petra. So they've carved it out and they went in, it's a building. They carved it out and they went inside after they carved the face of it. Thousands of years old. Okay, again, the land of Canaan. Everything on the west side of the Jordan down to the desert. All right, now here's a color picture of your map from last time. So if you don't have it filled in, gives you a little better idea of some of the places that, particularly Simeon's land grant was within the land promise of Judah. So you have East Manasseh, you have Gad, you have Reuben, the half tribe. You get over to the left side, and then if you're going from west to east, you have Asher and Naphtali, all the way over to the Jordan River. And then again, you have Zebulun and then Issachar if you're going from west to east. Oops, let me go back. Lake Eula, remember, it's not around anymore. They filled that in because of the mosquitoes. And then down below this, you have West Manasseh. You have Ephraim. Ephraim was probably the prominent tribe of the northern kingdom. And then you have straight north to the west, north of the Dead Sea to the west, you have Benjamin. You have Benjamin. And then right off of Benjamin over to the Mediterranean Sea, you have Dan. Now, Dan didn't last long because the Philistines lived here. And Dan couldn't go in there and run out the Philistines like they were supposed to. I keep hitting the wrong button. And so they came up north, south of Mount Hermon, around in that area, and located a city. And so Dan moved all their stuff up there. But they originally started out right here by Ephraim and Benjamin. And of course, Judah, and then within Judah is Simeon. But the Philistines caused a major problem. Now, Jerusalem is just south of Benjamin. Now, ultimately, what happened was Benjamin was just incorporated into Judah when you have the divided kingdom. So they became incorporated into Judah, and it never was a tribe of its own. Now, what we have here is the 6 cities of refuge. Now, if you want to put this on your map, which map? Let's see. If you will take your map from last week, where you divided up I think it's this one, right? Is that the one? I get them mixed up here. And we will point out these cities of refuge. There were 6 cities of refuge. You had 3 on the east side. You had 3 on the west side. They were scattered from north to south on both sides. Okay, we have Golan, and we'll have a little better picture here in a minute. Golan, up at the top, in the tribe of East Manasseh rather. Then you have Ramoth Gilead. That's a name we're familiar with. It is within the tribe of Gad. And then all the way down here in the tribe of Reuben, you have Bezer. Those are the eastern cities of refuge. Now, on the other side, let me see if I can find it here. You have Kadesh. I'm not seeing it. Oh, it's not high enough. Let me go over here. Well, anyway, we'll get a little better one in a minute. If you look on your map and you go just to the west of Lake Hula, you can write Kadesh. Kedesh. That's a city of refuge. And that is in I think Naphtali. Yeah. And then the next one is Shechem. We're familiar with that name. Shechem in West Manasseh. And then you go all the way down into Judah, the most southern of all of the cities of refuge, and you have Hebron. Hebron is well known to us. Abraham had connections to Hebron. King David had connections to Hebron. He ruled there for 7.5 years when he was king. But what was the point of the cities of refuge? And be safe. Yeah, if you accidentally killed someone, for the manslayer who didn't commit murder, if you accidentally killed someone, you could flee to one of these cities of refuge, whichever one was closer, and that's why they're scattered out like they are. You have one in proximity to all of these places. Now, why would you have to flee? What's the problem? you have family members. And the family members of the person who was accidentally killed, if they could catch you, you were a goner. And you had to stay there until, you remember how long you had to stay there? Till the death of the high priest. Now, who knows? You might just get ready to settle in. You don't know how long you're going to be there. Yeah, that's it. That's it. So those are the Caesar Refuge. Here's another pretty good little colored map of the divided tribes. Manasseh, Gad, Reuben, Asher, Naphtali, Zebulun, Issachar. That's the one that's going to cause you a little trouble, if you have trouble. And if you're like me, Kadesh would have been about right here. If you're like me, you had a little trouble on remembering that stuff. But Asher, Naphtali, Zebulun, Issachar, then you just go down to Manasseh, Ephraim, Benjamin, and Dan, and Judah. Of course, Simeon's within Judah. That's the tribal divisions. Now, here you go. Here we go. This is a little better. Golan, Ramoth, Gilead, Bezer. Here's Kadesh right to the west of Lake Hula. Shechem in Judah. So you have one in Manasseh, Gad, Reuben, one in each one of the tribes over here. Then you have one in Naphtali, which would serve this whole Galilee area. Then you have one in Manasseh that would serve this whole area right here. And then Judah, which would serve Judah and Simeon. Now, this tells a little bit about each one of these. Kadesh, also known as Kadesh Naphtali. This city was located in Galilee in the mountains of Naphtali. Located in the area known as, I can't see that. I was reading that earlier. Let me see here. Located in the area known as Bashan. Golan, which is the northernmost one on the eastern side, was 17 miles east of the Sea of Galilee. In this general area today is often called the Golan Heights. We read about that in Deuteronomy 4, verse 43. The Golan Heights was part of that area I told you about that became part of modern-day Israel after the 6 Days War. When all of the Arab nations around decided to go to war with Israel. Was that in 67? 67, I believe. And they thought that'd be a quick win, and Israel whipped up on everybody over there. Ramoth, also known as Ramoth Gilead, was an important walled city in the territory of Gad. It was located about 25 miles east of the Jordan River, near the border of Syria, Deuteronomy 4:43. Bezer, located in the wilderness plateau of Moab. Bezer was a walled city within the territory of Reuben. And Shechem, located in the mountains of Ephraim. This city was where the Lord appeared to Abraham with the promise, to your descendants I will give this land. So that's why we remember Shechem. And again, Hebron, the southernmost of the 6 cities, was 20 miles south of Jerusalem. It was also known as Kirjath Arba. Those are those cities. And now what we have here is some of the major judges and some of the locations. So when we're reading through the judges and you begin to talk about it or read about it, this will give you an idea of where these places are. Shamgar, tribe of Naphtali, Beth Anath, Elon, Rimnon is where he was from. Zebulun, Gideon. We remember about Gideon. What do we remember about Gideon? He started out with a multitude of men, and he just had too many, didn't he? God didn't want him to go to war with thousands of men, and so he had to weed them down to ultimately, how many did he end up with? 300. 300. God was making a point. From the tribe of Issachar, Ophrah, Ophrah. Jephthah, from way down here. Of course, it's not way down here. It just is on this section in East Manasseh. But what would we remember about Jephthah? What did he do? He made a rash vow. He made a foolish vow. He was going to offer the first thing that came out of the house if God would give him success. And likely he thought that would be a lamb because that was something that was common to that time. And if you remember the proverb, or the, not the proverb, the parable that Nathan told David, that would have been about right. A little lamb come out, and instead of a lamb, it was his daughter. So he had to offer his daughter. Now, no one believes that's reasonable that he offered a human sacrifice, because God has never asked for human sacrifices outside of testing the faith of Abraham, and he didn't allow him to offer Isaac. And he spoke against the human sacrifices of the heathen nations. From Canaan, Jair, the judge Jair. And so we see where those are some of those in the northern area. There's Jephthah. We have Ehud. Ehud was the left-handed dagger man. I remember him well for that. From Judges 3:12 through 30. Deborah from Bethel. We have Abdon from Pirathon. Tola from Shamir. Ibzan from Bethlehem. We have Samson. We all remember Samson, probably one of the most well-known, if not the most well-known judge, from Zorah. Who did he have a problem with all the time? The Philistines. And no wonder, because what tribe is he in here? He's in his tribe Dan. He didn't like being run out all the time. And then Othniel. He's down here in Deborah. Now, what we have here is just kind of an overview of the old Babylon kingdom. You had Assyria up here. You had the Medes and the Persians, and it eventually became just the Persian Empire over here. You see the Nile River, the Delta here, Sinai Peninsula. And so when we look at these, as you're studying through the Bible and you get an idea and you start reading about this will come to mind. This will help you out. The Hittite nations that no one ever believed, and that was one of the things the heretics mocked the Bible about, until lo and behold, back in the 70s, they dug up the Hittites up here in modern-day Turkey, the Hittite nation. That's Nineveh. Of course, we remember Nineveh as the capital of the Assyrian Empire. Who was going to go to Nineveh? Jonah was supposed to go to Nineveh, and he said, okay, I'll go. And he headed that way. And he ended up having to come back. He got a ride with a big fish. Didn't work out exactly the way he wanted. Why did he want God to destroy those people? They were a wicked, evil people, but there were a lot of wicked, evil people around. Revenge. Jonah was a patriot. And the Assyrians had mistreated his people. The Assyrians had mistreated Israel. They were a wicked, no good, mean people. They would cut the unborn babies out of the mothers and hang them around their necks with the umbilical cord. That's the kind of people you're dealing with here. Now, they repented, and about 2 generations into the future, they were destroyed because they could not maintain their behavior. Tiglath-Pileser was their first ruler. Here we go. Here is the divided kingdom. You have Judah, the Philistines, they couldn't get rid of them. And this is the northern kingdom, sometimes called Ephraim. Now, this is the times that Israel was taken captive. Israel was the northern kingdom, taken captive by Assyria first, carried off into Assyria. And what Assyria would do is they would bring folks back and populate the area. They'd take you from this area, take you to a place you weren't familiar with, and bring somebody else back. That's how they kept control of you. They didn't want you to be very familiar with your surroundings. And so they were able to keep wars down by doing that, 2 Kings 17:24 through 41. Babylon would do the same thing. Babylon came over and they took the southern kingdom. And Daniel went off with them. And how long did they have to go into captivity? 70 years. When they first went into captivity, they said, okay, we're not going to be here long. The prophet said, listen, you're going to be here for 70 years. Go in there and make a life for yourself, build your homes, go into business, do whatever it is you got to do, but you are going to be there for 70 years. This is not a short-term thing. And so when they were able to come back from Babylonian captivity, not everyone, this is the old Babylon, not everyone wanted to come back. Nabopolassar was the father of Nebuchadnezzar, who carried them off into captivity. He defeated the Assyrian Empire to become a world power. Let's get over here and look up what I'm getting at. I can't see what that is. Okay. Huh? Yeah, Padan Aram. But in 605, that is when Nebuchadnezzar defeated Pharaoh Necho at Carchemish and became the superpower of the ancient world. Now, again, this is the Median Persians. This is the Assyrian Empire. This is when Babylon came into power. Nabopolassar's son Nebuchadnezzar was the general in charge of his father's armies that defeated the Assyrians and the Egyptians. He carried off Jerusalem in 606. And when his father died, he had to go home, because during that time, when someone died on the throne and you were next in line, you better get over there, because someone else would get your spot in a hurry, and then you'd have a coup on your hands. In 609, Daniel went on over to Babylon, Ezekiel in 597, Zedekiah in 587. Nebuzaradan was the chief captain of Nebuchadnezzar's army, and he carried 745 persons. All the persons were 4,600. So he carried 4,600 people into captivity, Jeremiah 52:30, for Nebuchadnezzar. Zerubbabel, we remember hearing about him. He was leading a bunch of folks back. And again, this is what we were talking about. Ezra came in 458, Nehemiah in 444. But here's the thing. When they were coming back, and we're going to have to end here in about 3 minutes, they weren't made to come back. They had built lives over there, and if they wanted to stay, they could stay. Now, when Nehemiah was in the process of rebuilding the walls, you remember he had a little problem, and they said, "No, wait a minute, you don't have any right to do this." So I believe it was Darius. He went back and looked at the archives, and Cyrus the Great had written into law that the Jews were to go back and they were to rebuild Jerusalem. And what happens if a Persian writes a law? It cannot be changed. And so Darius said, all right, carry on. And so that's what they did. And here's what we have. Zerubbabel went back to build the temple. He had a little problem there, but he eventually got it finished. Ezra in 458, he went back. We call Ezra the heart preparer, because the people had not been worshiping properly. And then Nehemiah was the wall builder in those different times. And again, if you didn't want to go back, you didn't have to go back. The restoration. Now, if you go back and you look in Nehemiah 3, and you start up here at the sheep gate, Ezra, going counterclockwise, he takes you a tour all the way around the wall of what they did to rebuild this wall. He talks about that. Here, these are just the kingdoms later on after Israel and the divided kingdom and Judah had begun to lose their power. All right, any questions or comments? We went through that pretty quick, but anyway, keep studying your division of the tribes, and I'll probably bring a blank map to you here in a week or two for you to fill it in. It'll cost you 1,000% for your grade.